everybody, and welcome to the first episode of our middle grades conversation. This is our 8th or 9th season. Believe it or not, we're sponsored by the Middle Grades Collaborative, and essentially we're a bunch of practitioners who get together on a monthly basis to talk about the different themes, ideas, and events that are occurring in our classroom at the middle level. My name is Don Taylor. I teach sustainability at Main Street Middle School. And I'm very pleased to have actually in the house today. I'll let them introduce themselves. Dr. Katie Farber.
Hi, everybody. Katie Farber from St. Michael's College, assistant professor there, and former, but just love the teachers, right? 20 years or so in myself, and try to get in schools as much as I can.
I'm Evie Gray. I use she, her pronouns. I teach at People's Academy middle level. I'm an 8th grade English teacher this year.
Hi everybody, I'm Kevin Pioli Hunt. I'm a 5'8" generalist on Swift House at Williston Central School.
Awesome. And so typically, our first conversation is about the start of the year, how things are going, and how you're getting to know your students and your families. And I'll just kind of turn it over to Katie real quick, and maybe you can give us an overview of why that approach is so important at this time of year, and maybe some of the things that you've seen in classrooms that you think works well in terms of getting to know students and their proclivities, successes, and challenges so that you can dial in the work to meet their needs most effectively.
Yeah, so I just had the privilege this week to go to Stowe Elementary School twice and take pre-service undergraduate students there, and really for the whole day so they could see the span of math instruction. But what I could see that they were absorbing while they were there was the sense of belonging that was across the entire school. So from the moment they are coming in, you've got the principal greeting them by name, you've got the behavior specialist greeting them by name, you've got the teacher in the classroom greeting them, their work is everywhere. It's a palpable feeling of belonging, no matter how the kids are coming in. once they're there, they know that many people are glad to see them, and that the school wouldn't operate as well if they were not there that day. So I think that that sense can come across in a lot of ways, but it was really clear to me that the community was welcome, just by the sort of disposition of people in the building, and then the visual representation of community art, of welcome and activities that are weekly, where there's community meetings, and there's, it's just built into the bones and the structure of the school. And it's different for every school and community, but I really feel like that they've been doing that so well there that all the students commented on it. Even when you walk in, there's photos of all the faculty and a quote about education right away. So this is here are the people that are going to really try to care for you, and here's how they feel about the importance of education. So those are just a couple of things on my mind. And personally, in my own classroom, those first 6 weeks of school are vital, where you're doing all the responsive classroom or the advisory activities, the relationship building, and really looking for the assets of the students. What is good here? What are they passionate about? And then trying to get to know that from the ground up. So those are just a few things on my mind.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Meg O'Donnell, welcome. Do you want to introduce yourself real quick to our viewers?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Don. Yes, Meg O'Donnell. I teach 7-8 humanities at Shelburne Community School. I am so happy to be here. It's so nice to see you all. I apologize for being late.
No worries. And Meg, I think I'll repost the chat order, but I'd like you to welcome Evie. Evie is joining us today. And Evie, can you talk a little bit about what you're doing? As Katie mentioned, sort of that first 6 weeks, how are you working on building those relationships?
Yeah, definitely. I feel really lucky this year. Actually, this is my second and on some occasions, third year with some of my students, because I worked in 5th grade and 6th grade prior to this year. So I've had a lot of the students that I have right now for several years. So I feel like coming into the year has been a really smooth transition in terms of relationship building, that a lot of it is doing catch up and learning about how they've grown over the last couple of years since I've had them as students, which is really an incredible experience. And so this year, a lot of what I'm working on, because I know a lot of my students, is really nailing down the culture and norms of the classroom, and thinking about what kind of classroom community do we want to build together, knowing a lot of their strengths already, and really bringing student voice into that process. As a team, we worked really hard to structure the first 6 weeks of school through our TA model. And so doing a lot of identity work, sort of starting off with more simple shares, greetings in the morning, and working up to some of the more vulnerable conversations, really trying to embed identity and equity work in that TA model as well. I think those are sort of our big pieces right now, our TA and some norms and agreements for the classroom.
Awesome. Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, it's been a great start to the year for us. We just feel like after COVID, you know, our culture, I think across the board and across what we heard from other schools, took a little dip just in terms of kids just remembering how to be kids and how to interact with each other. And we're at a point now where we feel really strongly that it's kind of getting back to how it was before in terms of our kids respecting each other like as fellow community members, and that kind of sense of community and family that we've always had on team. Again, as a 5-8 team, we're really lucky that we get these 4-year relationships with kids and families, and really get to know, you know, both the students and their families at a really deep level. And we're getting back to that. I think the comfort with that as well. Some things that we do in the beginning of the year that are just traditions for us. You know, we always start out with our hopes and dreams conferences with our 5th graders coming in. So they come in before anybody else and meet us and see the space. And we just get to know them as people and as learners. And then the day before school starts, we hold a mentor-mentee breakfast. So all of our new students have assigned mentors who are typically 7th and 8th graders, some 6th graders who are ready for it. And they come in, meet each other. We bring all the mentors in ahead of time, a half hour before them, and just kind of let them get their meet and greet out of the way first, and then have like this kind of quick leadership. Like, what's it mean to be a mentor? Like, what do we expect? What were some of your favorite memories of your mentors, or what were some things you wish were different? And then when the new students come in, it's just a really great opportunity for them. We put up some things with interviews and play some games together. And like, that's their first go, like feeling like they're part of the team. And they have that one person that they can like really commit to, that they know is in their corner before they even step foot in day one of the school year. And then we do a lot of, the first couple of weeks, all team building stuff. We don't do any academic work for the first at least 3 or 4 days of school. It's all team building. And our second week of school, we always go on a camp out to Grand Isle State Park overnight. And again, it's really cool to have see our older students drafting the different groups, and mentors replaced with mentees, and just like hearing our 8th graders this year, just because we had the whole class list up, and they're, picking who's going to be in what group, and just really being sure that everybody, like one of our 8th graders point out, like, well, let's make sure that student has a friend in their group that they'll connect with. I'm like, the fact that they're thinking about that now, it's like, that gave me goosebumps, because it's been a minute since I think kids were looking out like that. And that's always a time too. Families come up, and it's a really special event and an opportunity for us to, again, see each other as a whole community and a whole family. And it's like after that camp out, I think everybody feels like they're in the fold and in the mix. And now we're just kind of slowly getting into all of our classes and routines here with, the whole academic workload and all of our core classes. And, kids are feeling it. We're feeling it for sure. Second full week of school. But it's so important. You can always tell year to year, like, why we take so much time at the beginning of the school year to just focus on relationships and just focus on like, what's it mean to be together in this space? So yeah, so far so good.
All right. Thank you. As usual, when I start hearing people talk, I think a lot about connections. One thing that Katie mentioned, I think is really important, is this idea of belonging, making sure that we're all belonging. I'm a special, so I don't have that team element, but also, as Evie mentioned, I've seen now our kids, I see them across the 4 years. So the kids now, which I think the best part of it is when you have kids who are coming in and you see this really tremendous growth, and like the first day or the second day, or, we're project-based learning, and man, you are doing so well. You can talk to kids who may have had some challenges in 5th grade, and all of a sudden they're starting to develop leadership skills, and they're modeling great behavior. And I think those year-over-year relationships allow for really positive supports. And also, if you have a kid who, has challenges, you can prepare for that, and you can start building curriculum or building experiences that are going to give that kid success. I think that's a really big, that's something we're focusing on this year. Personally, I'm focusing on really holding high expectations and standards, but trying to remain as calm and polite as possible when talking about those. And I've also, I don't know where I picked this up, but I'm saying we a lot, like, hey, we're not going to do that here. So trying to invoke that team idea and that belonging. One thing that's also happening is I've started to really focus on leadership skills. So we have another group that's a year-long, hopefully, leadership group. And I've got some leadership standards. And some of those standards that were developed for students include things like group process and also making sure that everybody has voice. And so that's something that I'm really paying attention to this year is like when we make norms, what's the process for that? And I did it with one 6th grade class and it was a little bit chaotic. A 7th grade class decided to vote on it. So you're seeing the development of process over grade level. And I think that's important. That's something that I want to be more intentional about. And then the other piece, as you know, Central Vermont was hit very hard by the floods. And so it's really a fine line to walk with the trauma. And, you know, we were supposedly post-pandemic. And so we talk a lot about the trauma from that. And now there is vast inequities between people who were impacted deeply by the flood and people who were on their typical summer vacation and had no impact. So how are we balancing the different levels of impact that the climate situation has had? And also, if you walk through, 500 yards away from school, you can see pretty significant impacts from this. And questions that I have are, is this creating climate anxiety? Or what's the mindset that we need to start growing with kids? That resilient mindset. So that's where we're thinking. And we've gotten right into it. When you know the kids, you can kind of get right into the projects. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to have kids moving around, using their hands as much as possible, because I think that engagement is what creates great relationships. Meg?
Yeah, thank you. Gosh, so much is to talk about. So first of all, today we had a little water main break. And so we got to school and basically had to turn around and evacuate. And I am just like reflecting on the fact that we were able to do that without incident. Like we got 800 plus kids out of our building, and our 7th and 8th graders were amazing. Like it was so great. And I think that's like where you see the testament, right? Of like, how are we doing? Like when we're in the norm of the day and everything's going fine, that's one thing. But I don't know that we would, Kev, you and I have shared quite a bit about last year, right? Like, I don't know that last year's group, it would have felt like a very different experience. And so it was really, I'm really proud of them. It was really lovely to see how they helped to model for the younger kids when we were tested, right? When we were having to deal with this. We've been, I teach humanities with Wendy Halleck. So something that we've been really trying to get to, and Kev, you're reminding me how much I miss my goals partners. We used to have goals partners years ago, and I really would love to get back to that. So I love that idea of the mentor-mentee. Wendy and I are really committed to developing curriculum with our kids through their questions, through inquiry. And so we have been spending quite a bit of time the start of the year just leaning on, what are you wondering about? What are you curious about? You have questions. You are a valued contributing member of our curriculum. And it doesn't make sense for me to just like put together the stuff if you don't have your voice in there. So we've been spending a lot of time with that, and we have this waterfall schedule. So we have our kids for an hour, and last year they were like, we need time in between classes. It feels too hectic, and we're all in the same space. So we built in these 5-minute transition times. It has been so lovely. Like it just creates this calm. We're not frenetically trying to get from one class to another. And we told them, like, we value that. We value your input, and we want to make sure that we adhere to, like, if you give us your input and it's something we can change, we can't make all the changes, but there's some things we can do. So it's really given me a whole hour in a class. Like last year I had hour-long classes, but I really didn't. This year I have an hour-long class. So every day we're like just doing some fun, like for each class doing like a warm-up thing, that whatever it is, would you rather, just all kinds of games or activities to get to know one another. We do teach 7-8 multi-age in our humanities classes. So again, really asking the 8th graders. And I think I'm going to be fair. Like, I'm going to be a little, honest with you, that the 8th graders this year there were some behaviors that they admired about last year's 8th graders that they're trying to reconcile in their brain. Like, wasn't it so fun when this was really disruptive? And it was like, well, yeah, no, it wasn't. So trying to remind them that there's other options. You have lots of other ways to be in class, and we don't have to carry with us what last year was like. We can change it. We have the power to do that. And you bring your voice and your positivity. Katie, I heard you talking about assets, right? Like really leaning on those assets. So I love that. And Evie, we're going into identity stuff next. So I can't wait.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. The kind of a follow-up question to that, there's two, and I'm just going to ask the first one. We're going to talk more about this in next month's webinar, but how are you thinking about equity or anti-racist education from the get-go? Is that something that's on your mind, or is that reflected in what you're teaching? I know it's kind of the first part of the year and everybody's getting settled in, but what are the thoughts or themes, or maybe Katie, you could talk to us about, suggested equity pieces. I know I'll just kind of start off. One of the things that I'm very, very cognizant of is sort of how the classroom looks and the examples that I'm giving and what we're focusing on, books that I'm reading, et cetera, et cetera. And that's that's sort of the low hanging fruit. But maybe Katie, you can just start us off. What do you see or recommend in terms of these equity pieces and baking those into our teaching right from the get-go?
Well, I really like when,
Katie, you're muted. You're on mute.
thank you.
That was my fault. Sorry.
And we lost the screen for a
We're
minute.
co-hosting. That was my fault too.
You all just
We're good.
finished,
It's
and I was
fine.
like,
Can you start all over? Because it looks so good.
That's me.
So funny. Evie, I was thinking about what you said about establishing those norms and then also working on those identity projects. And I think those are just vital to a successful launch, right? Where we're building these environments where everybody sees each other, they see what we have to offer. So you're building the ground from which then you'll work into those courageous conversations, those norms where, it's okay for people to question each other and for people to have conversations about the news that is fraught, right? But we've got to get there. We can't do that on day one. You've got to build the house first, right? So I think that all of the things that you have all been talking about are the way in to those conversations, right? And so we're making people, hopefully helping kids feel safe, helping kids feel seen, helping kids feel heard, helping them be seen for their assets and who they are and what they can already do before we do anything with them. And then certainly, I really liked using morning meeting and reading like a social justice poem at every morning meeting and see what lands and what conversations happen. Sometimes they don't happen. Sometimes you look at the picture that goes along with it, but sometimes you are really able to go deep unexpectedly in a morning meeting, or perhaps it's a news item that people have heard a half truth about, or they're worried about it. And then that's the place where you can get access to that kind of conversation that's going to move the needle. And then I think deliberate intentional teaching, like of, what Kyle and Andrea did with Rebecca Haslam's calling in, calling out, that version that's so accessible. I think you can really make those concepts accessible at every grade level. So holding space for those kind of the way that we treat each other. It's kind of like that philosophy of, what exists in society is broken and messed up with so many systems, but what can we create in here that's different, that we might raise kids to model once they get out into the world. So I think any system or any diverse lit or safe spaces where you can do those things has to be built within the first 6 weeks of school. I mean, it's ongoing, but those are just a couple ideas.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you very much. Evie?
Yeah, a couple of things are coming up for me around this. I actually took from St. Mike's their no hate, no harm policy, and sort of adapted it for middle school. And I've been using that for the past several years so that like, and it's grown beyond just my classroom now, which is really nice. I think most teachers in our school have the no hate, no harm policy posted in their classrooms. And so when, something hateful or harmful arises, that you can point directly to that and be like, look, this violates this. This is like my non-negotiable. You can help create the norms and agreements in this classroom. This is a non-negotiable, and really be able to point to that as a concrete thing in the classroom to hold students accountable, and also use it as a learning opportunity for students. One of the other things that, as I transition into my new role as an 8th grade teacher this year, I've inherited a lot of like very old curriculum. And so, and I have a new teaching partner as well, who's for humanities. And so we've taken, this idea of that has been taught for a long time around dystopia and dystopian lit, and really tried to revitalize it by, in my classroom, we're reading book club texts rather than just reading The Giver, which is a great book, but it's older. It's written by a white author. It doesn't have a whole lot of diversity. And so then offering a variety of texts, we have Indigenous authors, we have Black authors, queer authors, just a great variety of texts for students to choose from. And so we're reading those books in my class and trying to decide whether we think dystopia is really a fictional concept, or are there populations in the real world that experience dystopian society? And then in the global citizenship class, with my co-teacher, they're looking at like the Industrial Revolution, and looking at different examples of like child labor and civil, like the rights of different populations of people. And we're going to collaborate on some argumentative writing around whether or not, dystopia is actually fictional, or does dystopia really exist in the real world, and really critically analyzing different people's different lived experiences. So really trying to diversify our curriculum in that way. And I think we're trying to pull in this year, this continued thread of thinking about perspective taking, of who's telling the stories that we're digesting, whose voices are missing and marginalized, and what might the story be like from those other perspectives, which I think is something Christy Knoll at South Burlington, as an inquiry cycle that she uses, that I really appreciate. So those are some of the things we're working on 8th grade.
Thank you very much. Kev? Some of the things I know that we've done so far in the year, like we start out with just kind of identity project for all of our cores, and we bring back out like the identity wheel and just talk about like what makes us all human and unique, and why we celebrate those different traits. We did this whole like seen and unseen. Every year we try to mix it up and have kids create something different. So it's like they had like this, they could do an iceberg or a tree with its roots, just things like that, for seen and unseen identities. And with like our lit groups, we usually run about 5 or 6 different rounds of lit groups throughout the year. And what's nice is, between our interns and paras, we can offer a lot of different options. So as a team, we try to stay super cognizant of making sure that, we have a diverse range of authors and what we offer. And just making sure that, again, there's always something that's out there. And like looking at like social studies curriculum and moving forward, everything that we're trying to do curriculum wise is through that lens. My colleague Debbie found this awesome resource called the SERP Institute. It's a Strategic Education Research Partnership, and they have just free units available, and they are all just like based on this ABAR, just everything's through that lens, and it's been incredible to look at. So we're going to unpack that a little further this year with our students, and kind of diving in with that first essential question of like, how can youth be, ABAR leaders and essentially like establish a sense of humanity and connection with one another. So like that's kind of like our main focus as we are starting to roll out these first couple of units. So we try to do our best with keeping it at the forefront, and then just whenever we can, we watch CNN 10 in our classes, and if something comes up, just again having that space and having those conversations with kids and allowing them to have tough conversations with each other is always seems to be super powerful and helpful with what we do.
All right. Thank you very much. Again, I just kind of listen to what everybody is doing, and it's really so impressive this, already in the year. And it sounds amazing. One of the things that we're working on in my classroom is a little bit simpler. It's just vocabulary. And we're actually reading about a lot of our community partners. So we take gleaned or excess food products like this week we've been working with potatoes and squash, and we've been making potato summer squash soup, and our kids are donating it to the Good Samaritan Haven of Barrie, which is a social justice organization that serves to support the unhoused. And we also work with Just Basics, which addresses food insecurity in central Vermont. And so we read the mission statements and the summaries of those organizations. And in those summaries, you see words like inclusivity, you see systemic barriers. And what Evie was saying about are dystopians real or are they fictional? When you start reading some of the information about food insecurity and how many Vermonters don't have enough to eat, and you also hear about agriculture in central Vermont and how that's been impacted, we're just trying to kind of pick out the vocabulary that we think is going to make kids start to understand some of the equity issues that involve things like food systems, that involve things like educational systems, and then linking that to this decision-making process. So if these things are happening, what are we going to do about them? And what are the processes and the platforms that we can access? And what skills do we need to access them? And then once we access them, to make change. And so a lot of vocabulary work, a lot of explaining, having kids ask questions, and then, showing the different, we keep data on, the meals that we're donating and how that's impacting Vermonters. And then we ask those organizations, what do you need? And they come back with things that are surprising. We wanted to do a winter clothing drive, and they say, well, instead, what we really need is thick blankets for the winter, right? And so, okay, we're going to do a blanket drive. And then we're talking with kids about that. And I think those become equity conversations, especially when kids are like, holy smokes, folks don't even have, blankets or toothpaste or enough food to eat. And so we're trying to put it in contextually, identifying vocabulary. And so then that will lead, I think, to those deeper conversations about what are other areas, just in addition to food insecurity, what are other areas where folks are getting marginalized or are marginalized, and what do we need to do about that to create sustainable communities? And I guess just one thing I'll add too, we haven't talked to kids about this, but a big thing is how are marginalized communities being impacted by climate change, which is a huge topic and one that we have to tread very carefully in, because some of our students may be parts of those populations. And so I'm still, working around that. Meg?
Yeah, thank you, Don. Gosh, I feel like I'm doing a lot of learning myself this year. Like I'm in this African American history course with Evie, which has been amazing. At St. Mike's, it's part of the Racial Equity for Educational Justice. Oh my God, it is so powerful. It's so powerful, and so I'm learning about so much that I didn't know, and I was a history major. And this is something that I'm just like reconciling with, is what is my obligation as a humanities teacher to make sure that my students get accurate history and accurate information. So we haven't dove into our content necessarily yet. We're still in the beginning phases, but between the Indigenous Perspectives course that I took this summer and the African American history course for educators that I'm taking right now, there's so much rich content. And so what I'm trying to work with is, what are the kids' questions that they have about themselves and the world, and what are they wondering about? And then taking that information and saying, okay, what's the information that I now have that I can make sure that is part of our learning? And how do I do it in a way, I think I'm cognizant too, Don, of I have 3 right now, new Americans in my core, and there are a few more that are joining us this year. And so, just the other day we were talking about 9/11, and these students, some of them are from Afghanistan, and they wanted to know. They had information from their country's history that we didn't have, and we had information that they didn't have. And so it was pretty powerful to just talk about it. Some of the things that I'm mindful of are just how are my communities impacted in the content that we teach, right? And how do I make sure that we have established norms so that it feels safe, right? It feels like their voices are part of this conversation. So I haven't necessarily picked the lane yet of how this is going to go. Wendy and I have content that we're expected to teach, but it's so big and broad. It's like economics and history and geography, right? It's like the beauty of the humanities classroom is that you can sort of pick your lane. And so we have a lot of ideas, and we really want to continue with the work that we did last spring. Our students were able to get a free fridge as a result of our community partners work last spring, which was awesome. It happened over the summer, so they got to see that their request had an impact on their community. And so we're trying to figure out how do we pull those threads, and we're joining with the sustainabilities what seminar that, or whatever that, I don't have the right word for it, but it's the up for learning, cultivating pathways. Thank you. There it is. So we're looking forward to getting that going as well. So lots of like ideas, and how it's going to manifest, I'll tell you in October.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Joe Rivers, welcome. It's great to see you. If you can just introduce yourself briefly, and I'm sure you've noted the theme of the question is just, how are you working with equity? We know it's the beginning of the school year. We might not have gone into those deep experiences yet, but how are you laying the foundation for that in your classroom?
Oh, I got answers for you, Don. I'm Joe Rivers from Brattleboro Area Middle School, and I'm still scratching my head here because I'm looking at the backgrounds that some of you are in right now, and I'm wondering, why do I still sit in my room? What's going on? Some of you are not there. But anyway, equity is a topic I think is really challenging. You're talking about, what I've heard is a lot about what we're doing in our interactions with young people, but I see it broader than that. I want to bring up broader perspective. There are staffing shortages across the state that are really challenging. I heard Kevin say, well, we have a lot of interns and paras, and so we're able to do this and that and the other thing. I don't believe that's the case for the majority of schools in Vermont right now. Most schools are understaffed, and that understaffing has caused programs that we have said we're doing to not be implemented the way that, with any fidelity. And so there are a lot of students who are falling through the cracks as a result of that. And I think as far as equity goes, we're going in the opposite direction. We can be talking the talk in our classes, but if we don't structurally create an environment in which there can exist an equitable education for all, then we're really missing the boat. And I think that's where we are right now. I don't see things, unstable home environments are on the increase. The programmatic stuff that's coming into our buildings around social workers, it's not enough. We don't have the para support in our classes to meet the IEP expectations. We don't have the special educators to meet the IEP expectations for those populations. So what I'm doing in my class is we're investigating the question, what is the purpose of school? And students have written their answers, and then they have interviewed someone about their age, and then they have interviewed an adult, and then they have gone online and they've researched 3 different reliable sources, and we've gone through what's reliable and what isn't reliable, and we've talked about all that, and then we've tried to take all that information and then put together an informed opinion piece that they can present. And so we've had to talk about what an informed opinion is as opposed to an opinion, how you can gather information from other sources and then make some decisions, evaluate it and those sorts of things. So that's been the beginning part of our year. The next thing we're going to do is, Don, we talked a bit about this sort of stuff before. The state's just been hit really hard by these weather occurrences in the summer. And so we're heading out in our town, Brattleboro. The Whetstone Brook runs through the middle of our town. And the town is working with the state and the federal government to try to mitigate future flood events in our community. And so we're working with the planning department in the town and the Vermont River Conservancy, and some archaeologists who are working along the Whetstone. There are a couple of mitigation projects that are happening in our community. And so we're going out for a few weeks, and we're doing field studies. We're going out to see what the adults are trying to do to fix the problems that we've got in our community that are raising their heads and becoming more and more a part of every day. So I don't know if that's equity, but it's trying to make students see what's happening in the real world in their community, and how adults are trying to join together to address the issues that are occurring. There's government. What is the purpose of government? There are agencies that are designed to deal with these things. So we're trying to interact with them and have them make connections with the young people, so that the young people can see, here are some adults doing things to try to address some of the horrible stuff we see in the paper or on the internet or on our feed as we're scrolling through every day. Done.
All right. Thank you very much. And, it's the first webinar and I'm kind of rusty, but just the ambitions and what people are doing is unbelievable. And I really thank everybody for just their commitment and their work and the ability to articulate it. It always gives me a ton of ideas. This is going to be the last question. We're going to kind of try and end. I know a lot of people have commitments, but I guess the last question is just, what's something that's giving you hope right now in your class? And, that's kind of motivating you to do what you're doing. And, just kind of a general sense of, geez, this is really getting me going right now. And I think that it's something I can carry on for the year. And I'll also just say too, that this equity question is something we're going to chase throughout all of our discussions this year because it is so important. And just a reminder too, is that our next conversation is October 21st, and just put that on your calendar. But our closing question this afternoon is what's kind of driving you right now? What's positive? What's good? Katie?
I'm not muted.
Oh,
Okay. No, I'm not.
no,
I
you're
thought-
not muted. No,
Sorry,
okay.
scary.
You got me all like worried now.
I'm just thinking about the importance of practicing, like for in predominantly white institutions and schools and spaces, to practice building stamina for having anti-racist conversations is a really important piece. And I feel like we were sort of talking about that a bit, and that's what I see specifically in one of the classes that I teach for undergraduates, where they may not have had the chance to have these kind of discussions before, and then to build their comfort with being uncomfortable and their stamina for having these kind of conversations, and then having the vocabulary as pre-service teachers to really grapple with these and become become well practiced and well versed at this so that then they can do it with their students. So that is giving me hope, is seeing them pushing themselves, being a little nervous, citing maybe an article for the first time that, from Gorski and Swalwell or something like that, where they're, and then, we were just in a school and they said, oh my gosh, on the walls, they had the norms for courageous conversations. Like, they're doing that here. Or they have the Born on the Water 1619 project picture book that's sitting out. And so it's like these things, it's like this river of change. And you see these seeds. I'm mixing metaphors there, but you see them and it just feels like progress.
Evie.
I think one thing that is really giving me hope right now, and helping me sustain, is my team. And I'm on a new team this year. We have a new hire. We have 2 new hires actually on our team, and the start of the year has been really positive overall, but not to say that we haven't had our typical middle school challenges. And it is really striking to me the difference of the team that I'm on this year and the way that we show up for each other. And, when something difficult occurs, it doesn't become like an opportunity to just complain or dig into that despair, but rather really checking in with each other and being like, how are you? What do you need? And just that, the dynamic on the team that I'm on right now is really positive. And I think it's making all the difference in my ability to be a resilient educator, and really persevere through, I think, some really, really tough stuff at the beginning of the year, but also looking forward, being really excited about the things we have planned and, the tougher months of the school year that are ahead.
Yeah, I'll echo that with the team piece. We're on year 11 now, with having the same exact team, and just everything is vibing really well. And just I know we're all really have been concerned about our culture and getting it back on track, and all so bought into doing whatever it takes to get there. And then the thing that's absolutely giving me the most hope has just been seeing the students' interactions with each other, and just how much it just over the course of the year just seems like they authentically care about each other. And to our 8th graders, being concerned about the legacy they're leaving behind and wanting to set such a good example and welcome these 5th graders into our whole fold and system, and just getting back to being kids together, and just being curious together and enjoying each other's company and not being mean. I don't know, it feels fresh, it feels good, and we're all super hopeful for this year.
Awesome. I would echo, have a new advisory partner this year who's been awesome. And this kind of leads to my second thing, which is I'm trying to focus on gratitude, and I'm trying to be nice and show gratitude to the people who are really helping me out in little ways on a daily basis. And I think that focus on gratitude also requires some empowerment and agency. And so thinking about that and really working on being a better collaborator, I think, is something that is also I'm trying to focus on. And in terms of kids, I think the program now, this is our 3rd year of the program, so I think kids know the expectations. I think there's activities that they are really engaged with. And I think that when you have structure and activities and engagement, you can become sort of the coach or just the supporter of kids. And so you're kind of cheering them on, as opposed to having to, I don't know, you know what I'm talking about, I think, but just being able to really focus on what kids are doing right. And that can just be so, it makes it so much easier. And I think one of the big questions that we have in our classroom, we talk about this all the time. If you want to get proficient with distinction, you need to say, how can I help? And kids who say, how can I help? It's you can do this, and that's what we talk about in terms of leadership. And kids see that, and it's just so positive. And because I'm always oh my gosh, thank you so much. Here's what you can do. And kids really, I think it's just empowering. And so again, gratitude, really supporting kids. That's what I've seen and I'm working on so far. Meg?
Awesome. Boy, I could just pretty much hit repeat for all that you've said. I mean, the team, we have a brand new special educator and a brand new paraeducator on the team. and they're just phenomenal. And gosh, the kids are so stinking sweet. Like they're just like this really nice group of kids that they give me hope and joy. And I'm personally feeling like I'm learning so much right now that I am excited about that. You know, I think sometimes I thought that the big retirement was on the end of the horizon, but it's not. It's so far away. And I feel joyful. I feel like psyched for this group. And I just got this book, Unearthing Joy, and I'm super psyched to check it out. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this also. This gives me joy.
Awesome. Joe?
Well, it comes down to the young people. We have students for 2 years, and this is the second year of that cycle. And so I get a lot of joy and pleasure from seeing the growth that the young people go through, and try to celebrate it with them and acknowledge it as I see it happen. And Don, you were talking, you sort of coach them through at some point. You're on the side and you're cheering them on, and I really like that part of the time I spend with them. And so that's the best part, and that's the part that gives me hope, is seeing. Today it was Kaysen figuring out a funky way to get from our school to another place in town, using local maps, and just seeing the joy on his face, and then I get to live that as well. So that's the good part.
All right, everybody. Again, I just deeply appreciate everybody's commitment to their work, and thank you for sharing that work. Our next conversation will be Thursday, October 19th, same time at 3:15. I'll notify everybody ahead of time. Please feel free to put events or happenings that you think are important onto that agenda. And thank you so much. Get out and enjoy the sunshine. It's a beautiful day out there. And again, thank you for everything, and we'll see you in October. Take care, everybody. Bye now.
Thanks, Don.
Thanks.
Thank you.